Good evening, and welcome to First United Methodist Church of Allen for our Good Friday service of the Tenebrae. I'm Mary Beth Hardesty-Crouch. I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm here with Reverend Jessica Wright. And we welcome you to this evening's worship service. I want to make you aware of a couple of opportunities that are coming up tomorrow and on Sunday. Tomorrow being Holy Saturday, there will be a special devotional that will be sent out tomorrow morning that you may engage with all day tomorrow to prepare for the coming of Easter Sunday. And we invite you to come back here to this same place, either on Facebook Live or on YouTube, to join us as we celebrate the resurrection at 9:30 with our live stream worship. As we prepare for this particular experience of worship, this Good Friday service, just to make everyone aware that the story that we are about to hear again is a sad story with some difficult things to hear. There will also be artwork that you will see that may have some images that might be difficult for some people to see. I want to make you aware that our children's ministry has a special Good Friday experience available for children on their Facebook page, and if you feel that someone in your household might enjoy that, we encourage you to navigate over to that and help them to enjoy that this evening. We're glad you're here. God is light, in whom there is no darkness at all. Jesus Christ is the light of the world.
And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and we loved darkness rather than light. Jesus went forth with his disciples across the Kidron Valley, where there was a garden which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, procuring a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that was to befall him, came forward and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go." This was to fulfill the word which he had spoken. "I did not lose a single one of those to whom you gave me." Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which the Father has given me?"
Our cup was filled with darkness. Our cup was filled with death. Christ took our cup and drank it, and gave us life, and gave us hope, gave us himself. Cup pass from me, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, O Lord, yet not my will, O Lord, but thine be done. In blackest night we hear Gethsemane, pleading with the Father for one more way, for one more hope, for one more day. My Father, let this cup pass from me. My Father, let this cup pass from me. Let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, O Lord, yet not my will, O Lord, but thine be done. Then they took our Savior and led him to a tree, and there they broke his body, poured out his life, put him to death, to rise again. My Father, let this cup pass from me. My Father, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, O Lord, yet not my will, O Lord, but thine be done. Thy will be done. Thy will be done.
So the band of soldiers and their captain and the officers of the Judean authorities seized Jesus and bound him. First they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had given counsel to the religious authorities that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. As this disciple was known to the high priest, he entered the court of the high priest along with Jesus, while Peter stood outside the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the woman who guarded the gate and brought Peter in. The woman who guarded the gate said to Peter, "Are you not also one of this man's disciples?" He said, "I am not." Now the servants and officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself.
Peter feared the cross for himself and his master. Peter tempted Jesus to turn and go back. Oh Lord, have mercy, lighten our darkness. We've all been tempters, our light is black. Peter, vexed and tired, thrice denied his own master, said he never knew him to stop a girl's clack. Oh Lord, have mercy, lighten our darkness. We've all denied you, our light is black.
The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teachings. Jesus answered him, "I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in the synagogues and in the temple, where all Jewish people come together. I have said nothing secretly. Why do you ask me? Ask those who've heard me what I said to them. They know what I said." When he said this, one of the officers standing struck Jesus with his hand, saying, "Is that how you answer the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If I have spoken wrongly, bear witness to the wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me?" Ananias then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They said to him, "Are you not also one of his disciples?" He denied it and said, "I am not." One of his servants to the high priest, a kinsman of the men whose ear Peter cut off, asked, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Peter again denied it, and at once the cock crowed.
Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so that they might not be defiled, but might eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusations do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not an evildoer, we would not have handed him over." And Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The religious authorities said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put any man to death." This was to fulfill the word which Jesus had spoken, to show by what death he was to die. Pilate entered the headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingship is not of this world. If my kingship were of this world, my servants would fight that I might not be handed over to the religious authorities. But my kingship is not from this world." Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, for this I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?"
Who was the guilty? Who brought this upon thee? Alas, my treason, Jesus hath undone thee. 'Twas I, Lord Jesus, it was denied thee. I crucified thee. Lo, the good shepherd for the sheep is offered. The slave hath sinned, and the son hath suffered for our atonement, while we nothing heeded. God interceded.
After Pilate had said this, he went to the religious authorities again and told them, "I find no crime in him, but you have a custom that I should release one man for you at Passover. Will you have me release for you the King of the Jews?" They cried out again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber.
Pilate asked the crowd to set free their good master. "Crucify," they shouted, "we don't want him back. Oh Lord, have mercy, light in our darkness. We crucified you, our light is black."
Then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him, and the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no crime in him." So Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no crime in him." The religious authorities answered him, "We have a law, and by that law he ought to die, because he has made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard these words, he was the more afraid. He entered the headquarters again and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave no answer. Pilate therefore said to him, "Will you not speak to me? Do you not know that I have power to release you and power to crucify you?" Jesus answered him, "You would have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me to you has the greater sin."
To mock your reign, O dearest Lord, they made a crown of thorns, set you with taunts along that road from which no one returns. They could not know, as we do now, how glorious is that crown, that thorns would flower upon your brow, your sorrows heal our own. In mock acclaim, O gracious Lord, they snatched a purple cloak. Your passion turned for all they cared into a soldier's joke. They could not know, as we do now, that though we merit blame, you will your robe of mercy throw around our naked shame. A sceptred reed, O patient Lord, they thrust into your hand, and acted out their grim charade to its appointed end. They could not know, as we do now, though empires rise and fall, your kingdom shall not cease to grow till love embraces all.
Upon this, Pilate sought to release him, but the religious authorities cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Pavement, and in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. He said to the religious authorities, "Behold your king." They cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." They handed him over to them to be crucified.
So they took Jesus, and he went out, bearing his own cross, to the place called the place of the skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha. And there they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, and Jesus in between. Pilate also wrote a title and put it on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." And many Judeans read this, for the place where they crucified Jesus was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. The Jewish high priest went to Pilate and said, "Do not write the King of the Jews," but this man called himself the King of the Jews. And Pilate said, I have written what I have written.
Is crucified for me and you, to bring us rebels back to God. Believe the record true. Ye all are bought with Jesus' blood. Pardon for all flows from his side. My Lord, my love is crucified.
When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and made 4 parts, one for each soldier, also his tunic. But the tunic was without seam, woven from top to bottom. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see whose it shall be." This was to fulfill the scripture. They parted my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. So the soldiers did this, but standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing near, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." And then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home.
Behold him, all ye that pass by, the bleeding Prince of life and peace. Come, sinners, see your Savior die, and say, was ever grief like this? Come, feel with me his blood applied. My Lord, my love is crucified.
After this, Jesus, knowing all was now finished, said to fulfill the scripture, "I thirst." A bowl of vinegar stood there. So they put a sponge full of the vinegar on hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the vinegar, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
When I survey the wondrous cross, on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour content on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my God. Above all things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood. See
Since it was the day of preparation, in order to prevent the bodies from remaining on the cross on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high day, the religious authorities asked Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they may be taken away. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and of the other who had been crucified with him. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once there came out blood and water. He who saw it was borne witness. His testimony is true, and he knows that he tells the truth, that you may also believe. For these things took place that the scriptures might be fulfilled. Not a bone of him shall be broken. And again another scripture says, they shall look upon him whom they have pierced.
After this, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, for fear of the religious authorities, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus, and Pilate gave him leave. So he came and took away his body. Nicodemus also, who had at first come to him by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds weight. They took the body of Jesus and bound it in linen cloths with spices, as is the burial custom of the Jews. Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb where no one had ever been laid. So because of the Jewish day of preparation, as the tomb was close at hand, they laid Jesus there.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there? Oh, Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there? Oh, sometimes it causes me